Welcome to One Room at a Time. I'm your host, Atticus LeBlanc, founder and CEO of PadSplit, the nation's largest co-living marketplace. And I've spent more than 2 decades in affordable housing as a property owner, developer, and now entrepreneur. This show brings together some of the brightest minds in housing and policy to talk about what's working, what isn't, and how we can create real solutions to one of the biggest challenges of our time. Joining me today is someone who's been studying and solving the housing affordability and inventory crisis for more than 2 decades. Kurt Carlton is the co-founder and president of New Western, the nation's largest private marketplace for fix and flip and fix and rent investment properties. Under his leadership, New Western now operates in over 40 markets, has facilitated more than 17 billion in transactions, and serves a community of 250,000 plus local investors who are revitalizing neighborhoods one home at a time. Kurt is also at the center of a new partnership between New Western and PadSplit, which is helping investors turn overlooked properties into much needed affordable rooms for America's workforce. Kurt, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really a privilege to have you here, and excited for the partnership between PadSplit and New Western. I know one of our major challenges is just finding inventory generally for real estate investors who want to use PadSplit to address the affordable housing shortage. And so really excited for that partnership. But yeah, I guess to kick off, tell people a little bit more about yourself, how you got into housing, what your housing story is, and your journey to entrepreneurship.
We kind of fell backwards into what we do today. It's such an interesting space. Investors buy 1 out of every 5 homes in America today. And I think people don't realize that the majority of these investors, like 96% last year, are people who trade less than 5 homes a year. So it's just such a hyper fragmented space that doesn't really get a lot of attention, even though it's this huge $500 billion space. But we started in 2008, with foreclosure crisis. That's when there was the real, moment for us. We wanted to aggregate these houses and basically have a huge REIT. Like, we were way too early. We had some really good technology that we built really fast. And we were able to acquire a lot of properties back then. And what we were not able to do is raise money, because obviously it was 2008, 2009.
I remember.
And that was the challenge.
Yeah. I remember. I was there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, very different problems. We were in real estate before that. I kind of had a playbook that I threw in the trash, and we had to rewrite this playbook. Mm-hmm. And we thought we were on the right track. But we kept, we'd have $3 million worth of properties we just closed on. And then we had 3-4 million lined up next, and we weren't able to fund them. So we started selling tranches of properties, one by one, to investors to make way for new capital. And we realized this is way better as a marketplace. Everybody wants access to this inventory. Nobody knows how to get it. It was so inefficient. Asset managers would get like 16,000 houses in a week. And then the REO agents didn't have enough time to go take pictures of them. You couldn't get them on the phone.
Sure.
But everybody wanted into this space, all these local small investors. And we just started the beginnings of a marketplace. We had to get really efficient. Today, we own the property for 90 minutes. We have to close on it. And that's really to ensure the customer experience and to standardize the process and the transaction. And now we do that every 13 minutes. So it's become this very different world than 2008. Back then there was too much supply, and now there's not enough.
Yeah. Was it still New Western back in 2008, or was it something else?
We were called New Western Acquisitions.
Okay.
We dropped the A.
And
that was a big deal.
And so in 2008 you were buying and you wanted to hold, but just couldn't finance them.
Couldn't finance them.
Got it. Yeah.
Very different. This was before Blackstone came in, and everybody, around 2012, they came in and the whole market started to shift then.
Yeah. Well, you and I have never talked about this, but actually, that's kind of where I cut my teeth, was buying houses here in the Atlanta area in 2008, when no one else was. It was definitely not cool. All of my former peers in the commercial brokerage industry looked at me like I was nuts. So definitely have very acute memories of that time. And I mean, people forget, but it felt like the world had ended, and just there were no takeouts of any kind. So we were borrowing hard money loans at the equivalent of 16 and 19% interest to make things work. And so I can certainly see the appeal of the marketplace. I assume the buyers back then were just paying cash or hard money as well for those transactions.
We had success early into the pivot with the marketplace, and then it just kind of blew up from there. And then it was really easy to raise money.
Yeah.
It just kind of started to turn right around 2010, 11. But we started a fund,
Mm-hmm.
and we started lending money, because now we said, man, this is just now it became about, if an investor, because all the other investors, that was the need, capital. So if they were going to purchase one or two properties from us cash, well, why don't we provide them some financing and they can buy 6 or 7 from us? So we started to scale that way, and we started to do the lending. But I remember those early loans, they were very, very high interest rate,
Sure.
but we had to pay a pretty penny to anyone willing to provide capital to us then. And that changed, everybody came into the space. Wall Street came into the space and started funding
Yeah.
all these regional players.
So tell us a little bit about like the evolution and what specifically New Western does today.
So today we're a marketplace. We understand this customer that nobody really knows exists, which are these small real estate investors.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you talk about it, this is what we do a lot when we run around and we talk to lawmakers, and we go to Washington, and is just trying to reframe what people think when they think about a real estate investor or a flipper. We understand this customer, and this is much more of a passion product than than some Wall Street guy with a spreadsheet trying to calculate an IRR. These are generally corporate refugees. They leave some combined income, if they're a husband and wife team, of 300 grand or something, and they want to replace that by, flipping 4 to 6 houses a year.
Sure.
And maybe they keep one as a rental, and that's their 401k. But they're just replacing this corporate job with something that's very much needed out there today. They're out there taking the risks, they're finding the properties, they're returning them to market. And this is the majority of the affordable housing today comes from these individuals. Sure. That are operating in neighborhoods they know and understand.
Yeah, it's our core market as well, and so you guys purchase the properties and then make them available through the online marketplace to these generally mom and pop type of real estate investors who then acquire them.
These mom and pop individuals are not generally marketing experts. Finding the property, they come into the space and they don't know where to look. They usually go to a realtor, which isn't always the best fit for this type of property. And they find us. Mm-hmm. So we're good at finding these houses, acquiring them. And depending on how long we've been in the market, sometimes we'll do that through marketing. But once we get to a certain size and everybody understands what we do, they understand we're the marketplace, and they bring us the properties to transact. So think about like a realtor that, has a lot of really beautiful houses on their website. And then one day there's someone brings them this hoarder house, and they think, oh, this is going to be a nightmare listing. Once they understand what New Western does, they understand, oh, I can sell that in a day on New Western's marketplace. They can make their 6% commission very quickly. They don't have to deal with contractors and a big long process where everybody hates each other at the end. Sure. And generally, it's better for the seller. These properties transact generally for a higher price on our marketplace than they will through MLS. We know that because we acquire properties on MLS. We're the highest bidder, and we resell them on our marketplace sometimes if it's one of these value-add distressed properties. So we've created this, you can think of it like a private MLS nationally for these kind of value add type properties.
So safe to say, like, if I would compare a new Western to an MLS and what I'm going to see on those two marketplaces, you guys are focused on the uglier houses, I guess, is maybe an easier way to frame it, that someone would have to put in a significant amount of work to gussy them up to put them on an MLS or realtor.com or put the sign out in front of the yard. But for whatever reason, they don't have the time or the inclination or the dollars to go do that. So it's just faster, easier, more cost effective for them to sell to you guys. Is that
so much easier?
Yeah.
If you're on the MLS and you have a property that's, got foundation issues and everything needs to be removed, that's a problem for most buyers on the MLS. That's an opportunity for a real estate investor.
Sure.
So we don't necessarily sell discounted properties or under market value properties. We sell a specific type of property where an investor can add value. They have to do something. Maybe it's in a neighborhood where you can easily do an addition, but the roof needs to be replaced, and it's beyond where the desire and capabilities of a homeowner, the repairs that are necessary. And it takes a real estate investor. And that's 1 out of 5 homes today. So it's a huge market.
No, I get it. I mean, I can certainly think of properties that I have sold over time where I have said, look, it's just not worth my time to go and try to get this thing ready for market. And it's easier to just sell it, even if it's at a quote unquote discount to what I could make if I had invested the amount of time. My return on that time is negligible when it's all said and done. So just better to sell it as is, where is. So what do you think? I mean, listen, I don't think it's controversial to say that there are a lot of policymakers, a lot of critics who have negative connotations around flippers or wholesalers generally. And my sense is a lot of that is just, to your point, maybe a fundamental misunderstanding of the market dynamics taking place, or just misunderstanding the customer. But what would you say to those critics? I'm sure you hear from them often.
Yeah, I think they think that this is an individual that should be taxed at a higher rate, right? We should really, I think the biggest, or there should be restrictions that are put in place. And I think this narrative on SFR or the institutionalization, a lot of change. So if you go, I was just at the SFR IMN conference in Arizona. And, that's the whole narrative, because why would it not be, right? You just take one of the largest asset classes in America and it goes for the first time ever from private to public and from local to national, right? Now you have national REITs that are publicly traded equities. So you've got all that happening. That's big news. And then everybody says, wow, they're pushing out the homeowner. And in 2021, early 2022, they had a big market share, but they are 4% of the transactions. We trade more homes. We're the largest home buyer in the country, and we buy more homes in some months than the entire SFR industry. And I think that just this small portion of homes that arguably maybe are, outbidding homeowners in some markets, but, there's a need for rental, right? Affordable, well-managed rentals. So this whole narrative, everyone thinks that that's what a real estate investor is. And that's not what 96% of the real estate investors are. So you've got this neglected asset class. You've got 15 million vacant homes in the United States, and that realtors just don't even want to list them. They're not marketing for these, realtors aren't like,
they get paid on commission.
Yeah, they're not marketing for $75,000 foreclosure or a pre-foreclosure or foundation damaged homes. They don't want those, but it takes a real estate investor. But the problem we have today is real estate investing and flipping homes is not scalable on a national level. If it was, we would have had all this extreme success with the iBuyers, right? It's a non-fungible asset, and it's not like, feminine products at Target where you've got big data and you can figure out if somebody's pregnant, right? Like in a neighborhood that has, it's different street to street, there might be 12 transactions in a year. It's just a real murky data set. It's really challenging. And then you add to that, beyond the physical characteristics of property or property data or mortgage data, you've got these situational things that are happening. It's just a very challenging market. And the last mile takes a human being operating in a neighborhood they know and understand. So these real estate investors, they're working in their own communities. 90% of these individuals are buying houses within 30 minutes of their home. And when you start to survey them and try to figure out what the motivations are, it's not always money, right? They want to do something. These are people that everybody knows, that person that has to be busy all the time. They're rehabbing their own kitchen by themselves and still working a 60-hour job. Like those people, when they decide to do something else, they become real estate investors. They don't do it for the money, and they certainly don't do it to stay sane. It's a hard job. Yeah. They just love the transformation. And we've got 300,000 of them on our platform now, and they're the ticket moving forward.
Sure. I mean, I always talk about from taking something from concept to completion, and just the idea that you are a creator. And I mean, the beauty of real estate or construction generally is that you can see that progress. And so I absolutely have felt that personally as a creator, but I know that for folks on the PadSplit marketplace as well, it's a huge part of what drives them, and a sense of pride. I want to circle back to something here though, because if there's one thing I want listeners to understand coming out of this podcast, it's like, how do you untie this knot? Because everyone reads in the paper about the villainous corporate landlords and corporations, usually they'll say like institutions, right? Institutions or private equity are buying up everything. But there was something you said in that last answer that I think is really important, which is people assume that these iBuyers are all just incredibly successful and they're just like these unstoppable leviathans who are consuming everything. And the truth is that's not real. So shed a little bit of light on that, just so that people really understand what's actually happening versus what they read in the headlines.
There's definitely a place for the iBuyers, and I think we'll see that. But they're really an alternative to listing your home. The iBuyers aren't trying to chase down burnout, foundation damaged homes and all these things. But so like, if you want to untie this knot, what do we need? We need 5 million homes, right? And we need things like PadSplit, which are super interesting. And there's just so many, the way information travels today. You used to have to go buy a book on real estate investing that was written 10 years ago by somebody that did something in a different town than you, and you'd learn about real estate investing. Now you go on social media and there's 100 new exit strategies and things like that. So the PadSplit, which was very common maybe in LA, and now, DFW is going to be the next LA with issues around affordability. And somebody can, you've got a Gen Z and an old school landlord, and they're going to buy the same home, but the PadSplit guy's going to dramatically increase their ROI because they're just deploying a different strategy they just learned about. So there's all that. And that's very interesting. And that is a way to really provide additional density without changing the structure, without having to build a new property. You've got zoning issues, at the municipality level around roommates and all these things, but you don't fundamentally have to change, the zoning structure to build townhomes or things like that. So that's a much easier solution there. But the big picture, if you back up, a lot of the homes you see today, 1 out of every 4 homes that you see was built in the last big building boom. And there's something unique about those homes. They are mainly on slabs. Mm-hmm. They're built cheaply. They had to be built really fast. And in 2008, we just stopped, right? Because obviously, there was a financial crisis and we thought real estate was going to go up forever, and they just accelerated building all these homes. And we have this oversupply of cheaply built homes. And now what continues to happen is just we lose these trades, we lose all these things. there's no new supply coming forward. Building homes is this high risk endeavor. Like, we built more homes in 1992 than we did last year. We still haven't recovered. But family formation continued to grow. There's 130 million families today. And then there was this whole millennial narrative around, like, these millennials, they'll only rent, but they just saw 2008. They didn't want to get into it.
Yep.
They delayed family formation. And now you have this demand on top of demand. So there's this huge demand for a starter home today. We're missing 5 million homes. It just depends who you talk to. It's between 3 and 8 million, different thought patterns.
Amazing they can be that far apart, but yes, I'm aware.
The government is not going to save us, right? So we go to Washington, and they just, they just rolled out this bill, which was just like advice to the counties on how they should update their,
Yep.
It's just like, what are you going to do with that? You're not going to 3D print your way out of this. And the big institutions haven't been able to do it. The iBuyers aren't going to do it. It's not scalable, but the local investors can. So this is like this all boats to Dunkirk.
Yeah.
It takes every individual.
Well, the name of the podcast is One Room at a Time. So obviously we're aligned there, Kurt.
So we just got to give them some wind,
Yeah.
I think, and just get out of the way. The nice thing about all these local real estate investors is they find a way. There's all these different strategies. There's the ADUs, which still so much in the way there, right? It's got mixed execution in different markets, right? But good intent. But these real estate investors, we don't need to be taxing them. We need to treat this like a muni bond, where we need to say, let's not tax their proceeds so that they start to move. If they need to make $15,000 on a house, they'll start to move into areas where they can make 10, and it's tax free, and they'll start to kind of move into these underserved areas. And the nice thing about flipping houses is that courageous person that goes into one area and does 2 or 3, now you have comps, now the rest follow, and you start to get that transformation. But you cannot build a $250,000 house anywhere where they need to be built.
Yeah.
And I think it's people don't realize how important that is.
Well, it's a question of risk reward and what are the incentives. But I remember distinctly, I was at a meeting of real estate investors earlier this year, and they felt afraid to tell their friends and neighbors what they did for a living, because I see this even still today, that what is truly a local entrepreneur or small business owner is lumped in with evil corporate landlord, or like, and this lack of distinction between BlackRock versus the person who is trying to retire, who's maybe doing 3 or 4 deals a year, and they're treated equally. And in some cases, you've got policymakers who want to legislate them equally. But these two things are not at all the same. And what I've seen sounds like a very similar experience to you, is like, these are absolutely the individuals and small business owners who will find a way to make this thing work. And if you want to go solve this housing problem, there's no world in which you can do this without those individuals. And especially here in Atlanta, like, I watched over the course of 10 years where neighborhoods were changed wholesale over the course of just a couple of years, but not because of one large either public or private investment, but because of the individual activities of hundreds or even thousands of homeowners and real estate investors who said, oh, you know what, like, that's a really attractive old historic house, and I want to go move into that neighborhood and fix it up, or I want to go move in that neighborhood, fix it up and resell it or rent it or what have you. And that doesn't make them terrible people. Right? So I just think that's super important to drive home that point, is that these are individuals just like any one of us, anyone listening. And if I were to ask the audience, are you interested in saving more money for retirement or earning more money for retirement? Almost everybody's hand goes up. But then you ask the same people the question around, well, do you think real estate investors are evil? And you'll see a much higher incidence of hand raisers. So, but it is, I think, really important to to drive that home, that if we want to create 5 million new homes, or somewhere between 2 and 7 million, there's not a world in which you can do it without incentivizing these independent creators who are doing this on their own, taking significant risks and want to reap the rewards, and ultimately are reliant on platforms like yours to be able to find these opportunities. So yeah, plus one, Kurt.
Yeah, I mean, they need to be understood. Like, there was this bill, neighborhood homes. Are you familiar with it?
Sure.
It's come around like 3 times. So everybody ran on housing. So everybody in Washington wants to solve this problem, but nobody understands the space. They don't understand that these are these small players out there. And neighborhood homes was this big thing that followed, student housing and how you build power plants and how you do these big things and incentivize and subsidize and get these programs going. But nobody understood, like, that's just never going to work. This is all small real estate investors. You can't scale this. You need to have something far more accessible. But I mean, they're operating right now without any subsidies, without any support, without any fanfare, as you're describing, but they're taking all the risks. And there was this bill, this terrible bill in North Carolina. And we went, and they didn't want anyone, investors buying homes. And they felt like that was getting in the way of homeowners buying homes. So we go down there to North Carolina. We go to Chapel Hill. We get all this data. And Chapel Hill had this wonderful program where they were looking at all the vacant and uninhabitable homes. And there was something like 250,000 homes that were uninhabitable, vacant, needed to be repaired. So we grabbed that data. And then we started to look at all the investor transactions off market. And then we started to look at what happened when they were resold on market. Almost all the investor transactions happen off market. There's 1 million transactions a year in the United States. Most of them are off market. Most of them are investment transactions, or 1 million off market sales, and almost all of them are investors. So we go there and we talk to the real estate association there, the state association, and we show them, like, hey, you're supporting this bill, but are you aware that over the last 5 years, real estate investors have generated $1 billion worth of real estate commissions on the secondary transaction? So they're buying these houses that you don't want. We got a couple pictures of what an actual before looks like.
Yeah.
And they're listing them with realtors on the market. And it was more important than that. It wasn't just $1 billion in real estate commissions that the association should be trying to defend. It was also the price point of these homes. They're starter homes. And North Carolina is one of the few states where you can build affordable homes. But regardless, I mean, like, having this extra supply of starter homes in areas where they're needed. It's the difference if a homeowner, like, the way you build wealth in America and become part of the middle class is through homeownership. That's the biggest asset, right? And that makes people proud of their area. If you own part of the street, you care about what's happening down the street, all that. And if you can't reach that first rung on the ladder, you won't get to the second and the third. So you think about this generational destruction of the real estate agent, income, because you don't have all these replacement buyers in 5 years that are going to upgrade in 7 years. And this is a big issue that NAR should be interested in. This was a huge year because we're tracking it. We're going to have some data in February, and hopefully the trend continues. But this is the first year, over the first 3 quarters, we've been tracking it, where local real estate investors have returned more inventory to market than builders. It's the first year they've outperformed. So they are the largest supply of net new homes. They find a vacant home, rehab it out of this continuum of vacant homes. It's the first year they're outperforming builders. And then when you look at the data, the price points, it's in this affordability band that just cannot be delivered in most of the cities where that need affordable housing, like Dallas. like
Well, any of them.
Seattle, LA. The amount of new construction in LA is dismal within the city limits where it's needed. That'll change with the fires, but
Yeah.
trending. It was bad.
Yeah. To finish this point, I mean, I think like it's super important for the audience to realize that when we talk about new supply, that it's not just building new houses or the home builders or the builder association getting out there and constructing new. You have said previously that we don't have an affordability problem, that we have this inventory and utilization problem. Obviously, near and dear to my heart, I've often said that we don't have a supply problem as much as we have just this spatial efficiency and distribution problem. But would love to hear you opine a little bit more on that as we come to the close of our first session here.
Yeah, I mean, it's so simple. It's just a supply and demand. Everybody wants a house. I think interest rates are challenging today, but there's still a lot of demand for good product, affordable product, and we can build affordable homes in places like Beaumont, Texas, but we can't build them in most cities where land value and permitting challenges. I mean, even on the rehabs in a lot of these towns, when the permitting takes longer than the construction, that's an issue, right? So I think there's a lot to be said for getting out of the way. And I think the real estate investor needs to be understood their role, that they're a provider of housing, not a competitive force for housing and home ownership. But it's critical. If you can't, if you're a teacher or a nurse or you work at Home Depot for 10 years or something like that, and you ultimately can't buy a home in the town you live in, you have a lot of problems. You have the problems that you see in Los Angeles and Seattle, these affordability concerns. And I think one house at a time, finding these distressed, vacant, problem houses that a homeowner doesn't want to deal with, that takes localized work. That is not a government initiative. There's plenty of government initiatives that have really good intentions. Minneapolis zoning, for instance, right? 5 stars to Minneapolis for that. But like complete failed execution with all of the other challenges around permitting and things like that to put up a threeplex there. Like you don't see this explosion of threeplexes in every neighborhood, right? Just because they moved that over. The government can't do this. The government just needs to get out of the way, and they've got to find the inventory, and they've got to get out of the way on the zoning around the PadSplit model too, or you're going to end up with like Dallas will become LA.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And I mean, I think I just want to drive home that point that it is much, much faster, much cheaper for someone to take a property, as you alluded to earlier. Maybe it's a hoarder house. Maybe there's just something that makes it less attractive to ever go on the MLS. It's much faster to activate that unit than it would be to go out and go through the full permit process, maybe go through a rezone, get all the entitlements in place to go build a new property. Whereas you guys, it sounds like, can convince that seller, hey, like maybe you do have a way to sell this, and get them top dollar in the condition that it's at right now, and then put it back on the market, and it becomes one of those 5 million homes that's ultimately needed.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, like the PadSplit model, if I can buy a house and I can put 5 roommates in there, whether I live there or not, like I can do that as a college student with a second job.
Yep.
Like that's accessible. But buying a $750,000 home and that is a starter house in Seattle today, like it doesn't pan out to live there. So yeah, you need that flexibility. You need that. We need to think outside of the box with what's right in front of us, not with, how we're going to get.
Sure. And reset expectations, right? I mean, one of my favorite stories. Yeah, we had Leon Orange on the show. He was a veteran earning $60,000 a year, and he's able to purchase. He's not looking for his dream home, but he purchases his first home, covers his mortgage, does it again, then moves out and does it again, where he's now in a live work studio and quit his job and has his own photography business while earning 25 grand a year in passive income. So it doesn't take a large builder or corporate investor or the government to figure this out. Like, you need an army of people like Leon that can go out and do this, take the risk, but activate these units really quickly and ultimately address the problem.
Well, that's a boat to Dunkirk.
Yeah,
go get
exactly. I love that analogy. I can picture a future AI imaging software system with flippers, renovators, and boats to Dunkirk. Well, I know we've really gone through a lot here. I want to dive more into the partnership between New Western and PadSplit on our next segment of the episode. But it's been an incredible start to the conversation. We're going to pause here. When we come back for part 2, we're going to talk more about that partnership and the future of housing. And for our audience, you can learn more about New Western at newwestern.com. Or find Kurt on LinkedIn. You can also learn more about PadSplit's partnership with Kurt's company at padsplit.com/newwestern. And we will include these references in the show notes. Don't forget to join us for part 2 of this episode of One Room at a Time. Thanks again, Kurt.
You're welcome.